Okay, as you're aware, we're working on a food storage container that has the ability to nest and stack. And so this is the finished item. And another tab here, I've got a blank part. I've named it Food Storage 2. Actually, it's a new document with a part studio. The document name is Food Storage 2. And at the moment, the part studio name, it's Part Studio 1. So we're going to go ahead and name this guy Lid and Base. So now the part studio is called Lid and Base, and we'll build the parts in place. Also, we want to verify that the units are inches, and they are. Okay. I'm going to pre-select the top plane and make my first sketch. Right click, view normal, and we'll use a conic. And I'm actually snapping to, you can see the anchor point in the middle is what highlight, and put it to here. So this little point here is the corner point. And the first thing we want to do is select the row value. We're going to go with 0.55. And I'm going to hit escape, move that out of the way so we can see the point. Now what I want this to be, since it's a corner, horizontal here, vertical here, and that will make this conic tangent as it flows into the vertical and horizontal sketch planes. So what we'll do is go horizontal, pick that and that, and zoom in a bit here. Then we'll go, let's see if we got it. We didn't get it. Try it one more time. Sometimes there's a lag, and you want to make sure that it adjusts. Okay. And horizontal. There we go. And then we want to change to vertical. Pick that point. Give it some time in that point. And I saw it move just a little bit. Okay, and so now we have that constrained, and now we want to do a mirror. That way we control the shape of this by one dimension here. So the mirror plane is across here. Pick the part. Okay, and then pick the tool again. This is the mirror plane. And these two. And now we have a closed section. The next step, D on the keyboard, and we're going to dimension the horizontal width, which we're going to put at 10. Zoom out some, pan up, and then the vertical, or the depth there, we're going to put that at 8. Looks like I dropped off my tool, so let's try that again. There we go. That's 8. And that's our main profile. We'll give it a name. Come on. There we go. And if we rotate this, we'll see our shape. Now the next thing we want is to offset this perimeter shape so that we can create the stacking feature. That's what the next profile will be for. Once again, I'm going to, so I'm having a little trouble grabbing that. I'm going to hide this for just a moment. Pick the top plane, start a new sketch. Go ahead and get normal view and then show that sketch again. Now I want to offset the entire perimeter inward 1.25 is what I want. 1.25. Okay, and then escape and go ahead and name this stacking profile. All right, and check. So now I'll go ahead and hide the stacking profile. For that matter, I'm going to push P on the keyboard and hide the planes. This is the guy we want to extrude the base with. So we'll select extrude. Actually, I'll pick it first. You can go either way. And then I'll hit an extrude. So we're going to be making, looks like it's thinking. We want to go the opposite direction, flip. And we'll make that 4 inches tall. And we're going to include the draft in the feature. And we're going to make it 5 degrees. And right now, if you go to the front view, you can see that it's making the bottom larger when it should actually be the opposite. So I'll hit the reverse. Now we're going from the top being the full size to the bottom tapered in 5 degrees. And then we will name this base. And complete the feature. All right, looking good. And then the next step is we want to create the nesting feature underneath. And to do that, we're going to split this bottom. Let's turn back on the stacking feature. We can go ahead and hide the main just so it's not in the way in any manner. Now this profile, we're actually going to use it, that perimeter, to split this bottom. And that's done by going up to here, split, and we'll pick that. And we're going to split a face, so I have to toggle this to face and pick this bottom face. That's the face we're going to split. And now I activate the splitting tool collector, rotate around, and grab that profile. So if you notice, it says it's the face of the stacking profile is what we're using. And actually, I'm sorry, I should not pick that, but I should pick the edges. That. Because it's really looking to project that guy. There we go. And then I say done. And I'll hide that stacking feature curve for the moment. And now we have the base, that face of it. It's still a solid, but it's split. And what I'm going to do now is pick, so what I'm going to do now is pick this bottom split center region and go extrude. Now earlier I used a different method, or in another version, and I took and I did a move. But by doing an extrude, a cut with a depth of 0.375, and then I can include the draft right here in the feature. We're going to go 20 degrees for the draft. Now, what I need to do is see if it's going in or not. It's underneath the bottom, and it's a little bit hard to see. So I think what we have to do, oops, I went out of the tool. It's the wrong direction. And I'll show you how to check that visually right now. I believe we can do a, we're in a tool. Let's go reverse. And it's processing. And now go done. There we go. A little bit hard to see. Let's try this. Let's turn on the section, pick the front plane. And now when we look at the front view, we can see that right there it's tilted inward, and that's what we want. Turn off this section for now. So we're looking good on the base. The next thing we need is to create the sketch section to make the rim. So I'll turn back on my planes by pushing P on the keyboard and pick the front plane and then go sketch. And I'm going to right off the bat name it base rim profile. And then what we want to do is over on this side here, we're going to draw what represents the rim. So I'll go normal view, but zoom in over here, excuse me. And then I'm going to project this edge into the sketch. Excuse me. Let's go parallel. I'll draw. So I'm going to come here, out to here, and I'm just roughing it in now. Yep. There, there, and then there. And I want to turn on my constraints because this guy should be parallel to the side. I want to make sure that it, and let's see, actually, as long as both of the points are coincident, which it looks like they are, then it shouldn't move. I'll hit escape, and I shouldn't be able to drag this off, only up and down. So now I know that this line right here is running parallel, matching the draft, and that's important for the rim. D for dimension, and I'm intentionally picking this end point and this point here, and then placing the dimension, making that 0.375 for the rim. And then I'm going to pick here, actually what I want it to be, let me hide the base part for a moment. I'm really interested in dimensioning from here, which is coplanar, and I want to make that 5, but I think I'm going to leave it for just a second until I get the height, because I don't want my section to jump crazy. The height is going to be 0.5, and now we'll change this to 5 degrees, which is going to be 95. Okay. All right, now I'll turn my base back on. So it's important sometimes to hide features just to make sure you know that you're attaching to the right thing, because it's easy to grab other lines and things like that. Now, remember I intentionally picked this vertex because I'm going to put a round on here. If I had not put the round, had not dimensioned to the vertex, when I put this fillet, using the sketch fillet tool, I would have lost my dimension. So right now, I'm going to click there, and it's at 0.25. I'm going to leave it roughed in for just a moment, because the next step in laying this out, I'm going to offset to get the rim thickness. Right now this is a solid section, but we really want a thin protrusion to sweep around. So if we go offset and we pick here, here, and here, flip the direction and make it 0.09, which is the wall thickness we're going to use, 0.09. let's try that again. Let's go undo, undo, and re-invoke the tool and pick here, here, here. Let's drag this time so that it doesn't, now we'll make that at point. I'll hit enter and then go 0.09. So I believe what you want to do when you offset is to drag it, push enter, then it'll know that you want to lock in the offset at that location and then input your offset amount. So my offset amount right now, I hit escape so it doesn't try to offset again, is 0.09, which represents the wall thickness in this area, but it's not a closed off section. So I'm going to go coincident and pick the vertex and line it to the bottom and pick this vertex here and align it to there, or constrain it, I should say. So now I have an enclosed section that represents the rim. This is just extra. So this really is what we're going to sweep around. But we don't want that large of a radius. So I'm going to click this, right click it, and go driven, meaning something else is going to drive it. And we're going to dimension the inside, pushing D on the keyboard, clicking here. And now I want that inside radius to be 0.06 and the outside will follow. There we go. So it follows it and it becomes 0.15, but it's a driven dimension, meaning it's a variable. And it's the inside that's really controlling the size of that outside. Okay, so now we've got a complete section. I'll turn off those. Okay, and now we can say done. And the next step, before we sweep that, we really need to do a couple of things. And some of the order of what I've done is optional, but we want to shell this out before we sweep the rim. And then we also want to include our rounds on this base before we shell it. So that's the next thing we'll do. We'll push the round tool, and right now I've got sharp corners. If I select this face, it's going to look for the next walls and try to make a round, and it does. So it has to stop, and so it creates a tangency all the way around. And now I'm just going to change that value to something like 0.125. And then say complete that round. Now I want to do the same thing again, but I want to show you what happens. And it's a little bit of a drawback, which means, and you'll see. So let me invoke the round. If I pick this face now, the system is going to try to find out where to put the rounds on all edges. And since this edge is an option and this edge is an option, it's going to cause a round of the same value be put on both of those edges. And that's not really what I want. I want a different one. So in this case, you can't pick the face. So keep that in mind. And I'm just going to go back and pick the edge. And I'll pick the next, and the next, and the next. For some reason, it's saying that that's having a problem, and I don't know why it would be. Maybe it's, tell you what, I'm going to back out of this because I might have gotten it confused. Here we go. Let's start fresh. We're going to make, we're going to go ahead and set the radius first to 0.1875. And then I'll pick just that edge, that edge, that edge. And for whatever reason, for just a slight moment, it showed it couldn't make the round, and I'm not sure what to say about that. All right, and then we'll put the last round on the outside here, and we're going to make that a larger one. Oh, I'm going to go ahead and pick the face, since I know the only option for a round right now is right there. So I'm going to pick this face, and then it'll put it around the outer edge, the radius. Supposed to. Now it's making me out to be someone that ain't telling the truth. All right, let's undo that. It's letting me down. Its behavior is acting a little different than I thought. I know it's questionable when you pick that face, so maybe we should just stick to picking edges, which means you'll have to, if it doesn't trace the edge, the round tangent all the way around, then you're probably going to have to pick all the edges to create the loop. So in this case, I want that outer round to be 0.375. And then I'll pick the other edges, and we'll just keep moving like this. I was trying to give us some economy, but it didn't work out as nicely as I had hoped. Okay. All right, there we go. Now we can do the shell feature, which is here, and we're going to shell at 0.09, and we're going to remove one face, which is this first face. Now, if I wanted to, I can remove other faces. So you can have as many faces in here in this collector as necessary to remove walls. We only want to remove the top in this case. So now we have a completed base. And now we're going to go ahead and sweep the rim around. So I zoom in. We're going to pick the sweep. We want solid. It's going to be added to. And we're going to add it to the base, which is part 1. And now the section, or the face of the section to sweep, is going to be this portion right here. Now we activate the sweep path, and that's going to be around the outside of the part, which is really the same thing as the main profile. So if I turn on the main profile and hide the part, I know that the parent of this sweep will be my original profile. Now the question is, why don't we see anything happening? It's because we've got the add, and we're adding it to part 1, but part 1 is hidden. So if I unhide it, we should see the rim swept around, and we do. So just keep in mind, hiding and unhiding does affect what you see on the screen and what's linked to one another. So we'll say okay, and once again we'll hide that main, and we have a base. And there's one last step for the base, and that's to soften these edges. And in this case, what we want to do is put our round in the bottom inside. It's a smaller one, and then the other one will be this diameter plus the wall thickness. So I pick the round, and then pick the edges, those inner edges, should be 4 of them, and then change this to 0.06. And when we zoom in, we see that it's making the round. Also, if you look here, because that name is black or dark gray, you know that the feature is working. We'll say OK. And then we'll rotate this around. We'll come back with another round feature. And we'll make it 0.06 plus 0.09, which is 0.15. That way we know we have a constant wall thickness between those two rounds. Pick the edges. And we're good to go. We have a complete base. Now we're going to rename this to base. And we're going to pat ourselves on the back. The next thing is to start the lid. So to do that, we'll hide the base, unhide the main profile, and unhide, and we'll start with this, and then unhide the rim. Turn our planes back on. So what we're going to do now is make the section that represents the rim of the base. We're going to do the base, we're going to do the lid a little bit different than we did the base. With the lid, we're actually going to sweep a solid section of the outer of the rim of the lid, and then we're going to extrude, filling in the middle so that we have a solid slab that represents the lid height. Then we'll extrude that middle feature, and after that put our rounds and shell it. And that's a slightly different procedure. So the next thing we want to do, since I turned the planes back on, I'm going to pick the front plane. I'm going to hit sketch, and let's see here, view normal, pan over to here. Remember, this represents the rim of the base. Our lid actually sits on top of the base. So what we want to do is offset this outer edge here, drag it a little bit. It only needs to be the wall thickness plus a little bit of clearance, and I'm going to make that 0.5. So that means we want this to be 0.95 right there. I drug it right to where I want it. If I hit enter, it'll say, do you want to change the dimension? I'm going to say no. I'll just hit enter again. Make sure you hit escape, else it's going to try to offset if you happen to click on one of those lines. So I'm hit escape, the tool is unchecked. Now what I want to do is I want to close off this section, make it solid. So click line, and I'm going to snap that line right at the bottom and go up vertical. And then I'm going to make a horizontal here. All right, now this isn't a closed section. We have to make it a closed section. So first thing I'll do is dimension this distance from here. And I'm going to make that 0.125. The question is why? Really what I'm doing right now is making the rim of the lid just a little bit deeper than the rim of the base, so that in use, when you have ticked your fingers underneath the edge, you would grab the rim and be able to peel the lid off. That's what this is all about. So now that I've dimensioned that, I'm going to go coincident this point to this point. It's going to pull this line down. Then I'm going to go coincident this point to this point. And it says something can't stay. And for the moment, we have to get rid of this constraint. So I highlight it and then delete it. But what I want to make sure of, I'm going to go ahead and make this coincident and this coincident. Now, because that line is still blue, or the reason why that line is still blue is because it's no longer attached right here. So if I go coincident, pick the point, and pick the line, everything should go black. Let's see if I spoke the truth or not at this moment in time. Oh, it's the tool wasn't invoked. There we go. Okay, good. The reason why I didn't follow this line right here is because when I extrude and fill up the middle, an extrusion is a straight up and down. I didn't want any draft on there. Okay, you'll see in a moment. Let's call this lid rim profile. And we'll say okay. Now we will hide the base rim profile. So we'll sweep this solid chunk around using that profile. So if I pick it first, which you can always do, and then pick sweep, it already knows that's the face of the rim lid profile. I'm making a solid, it's new. Now I'm going to pick the path. Here, here, here. Let's move this over on the screen. And here. And then it's new, and we're going to call it rim perimeter. Say OK. Now, that's a solid chunk, which is not quite what we need at the moment, or it's not the complete need. I'm going to hide the main profile. I'm going to hide the planes. And now I'm going to extrude let's see here if I can remember this correctly. We're going to extrude from this face to the underneath face. I'm trying to remember if I can pick this or if I have to use the main profile again. So let's try real quick, extrude, and it wants a sketch plane. No, it actually wants faces or sketch regions to extrude. So it won't let you pick the edge. So what we have to do is turn on the main, and really what we're doing, just so you can see it, I'm going to hide the rim, and we're actually picking this guy here, and it's extruding it up. But the question is up to where? In our case, we want it to be up to a face. And right now we have no face showing, so we unhide part 2 and we pick that face there, and then it extrudes it up to the face. But remember, we also want to extrude down to the bottom. And by the way, we're adding this to part 2 in the merge scope. So now we activate second position. The drop down and pick face once more. And now we pick the bottom face. And if it doesn't work, then you need to check to make sure the second direction is pointing in the proper direction. And it is. Mine is working. And so now we have, excuse me, we want to edit this and call it the lid rim. Let's just call it lid, because when we add the next part onto it, it'll still be lid. We'll say OK. Now we're going to hide main profile, unhide stacking profile, and we can see it's hidden underneath there. We're going to do the split face again, but we'll split this top face so that we can create the stacking feature. So I pick split, toggle to face here in the collector, pick this face because that's what we want to split, and then activate the split with collector, and then we're going to pick the edges of that stacking profile. And if I rotate a little bit, you can see that that was sat below the face, and it's projected that perimeter up on the face and split it. So we'll say done. We'll hide the stacking profile. Now, if I pick this face and go extrude, I can tell it to extrude 0.375. And then we'll checkbox the draft, and we had 20 degrees of draft on the bottom, so we'll put that on the top. And if we look, this time we can see clearly that it's going the wrong direction. It's tilting out, we want it to tilt in. So if we flip the direction here, now we're good. Okay. Notice it changed the name to part, and I think it has something to do with what's added to what. So we have to rename this and call it lid. So now we have two parts, a base, which is hidden, and a lid. The lid is still a solid feature, and it's missing a couple of rounds. So we'll go ahead and put a round on this lower edge. We'll make it 0.125. And if you notice, this time it went all the way around just by picking one edge. The fillet tool is a little bit unpredictable. This is what we want it to do because the tangent propagation is pressed, but unfortunately sometimes it doesn't. So we'll say done, and we'll pick the tool again, and we'll pick this edge here. And see, this time it didn't go all the way around. Let's change this value to something like, let's see, I forgot what I had, 0.15 maybe. And then pick the rest of the edges. Okay. And then we'll say done. And then the last thing to do to the lid is to shell it, which is a matter of just removing the bottom face. Excuse me. Okay, so we'll push shell, go ahead and set it to 0.09 wall thickness here. Remove this face. Boom. It offsets all the walls and everything at the same time. Sweet. All right. So the lid is done. So we unhide the base. We'll see a lid and a base. And then what we'll do is turn on the section view, which is the front plane, and then go to front view, and we can see that our, slide over here, our base, our lid is clearing the base by 5 thousandths, 0.005. Let me see if that's right. Yeah, 0.005. So it's just got a little bit of clearance. Actually, it would sit on top here, but so that we have the clearance on the side, it's up a little bit there, but that's okay. Now what we want to see is the another unit stacked on top and see what the behavior is. Now, actually, that's something that would be done in an assembly, but if we don't want to go into an assembly, we can use a transform feature like we've done in the past. The way I'm going to do that this time is make two make connectors and then transform everything by make connector distance. So let's give it a shot. Here's the make connector tool, and basically it's a coordinate system that you manually place somewhere. So if I push it, then it says it's going to be on an entity, and if I hover over this face, if you notice right now the make connector is going right in the center of that face's area. That's what we want. So I'm going to click OK. And then it put it there. If I pivot, you can see that it's down inside of that stacking. So it's right at the level of this plane. That's exactly what we want. So we'll say OK. Then we'll make another make connector. And we want that one to be at the center of this face right here. And now we have that. Notice if we zoom in, I can't remember if they get bigger, they don't. The X and Y are facing in different directions. I think they have to face in the same direction. So what we want to do, let's just accept it for now and try. So we're going to pick these two. We're going to copy them. Looks like I have to copy one at a time. Copy. And then I'm going to move it by make connector and make sure the copy is checked. And so now I come and go from that make connector to this make connector, and see how it's flipped because my make connectors weren't facing properly. So let's go ahead, complete the transform, edit the second make connector, and let's flip its direction. Now it corresponds with the upper one. You can see the blue is vertical, red is coming out to the right. Let's see if it's parametric, the transform is parametric, or if we'll have to redo it. There we go. Now, it looks to me like that guy is buried in there. And it's because Mr. Vince, or Professor Haley, meant to put that make connector at that plane, and I put it up in here. So once again, since we're working with parametrics, things are parent-child relationships, things are updating, I should be able to edit the definition of that make connector one more time, and then our transform will be spot on. So let's go back to this make connector, double click it, and let's delete this face. Let's pick this face. The make connector is at the center, so we'll click the face, and then we'll check the direction, and it seems to correspond with the other one. So we'll say OK, and when it's done, it should transform that in the proper orientation at the proper height, and we got it now. So the face of that base, the underside, is sitting on that surface there, just like we need it to. That's a good thing. Okay. Now, let's see what we got for our we need a lid that's moved that same amount. I think what we want to do is come back here. In the scheme of things, let's do a copy of a lid. Let's go in here. And so we have a lid and a base. And then we'll pick this lid, copy, and we're not going to move it. I must not be doing something right, because I think, well, let's keep it for the moment. We're almost done here. Really, this is extra what I'm doing. We've completed the lid and the base, so I may splice that out of the video and make it in two, so that we don't have this extra length in there, or you can just stop right after the other part. Okay, I think I'm going to double click this guy and tell it copy and place. That's really what to be, and we'll say okay. So the base is copied in place, and we'll go back here to, it's still thinking, transform to, and toggle that to be a copy in place. Say okay. Now what we want to do that we have these two is we want to activate both of them. We want to go up to transform in right here, and we're going to try to transform by make connector now. From this make connector here to this make connector here, both of those parts, part 3 and part 4. We'll say okay. It's processing. I like that transparency there. We'll have to figure out how to get some transparency on our parts. Okay. Now if we double check by turning on the section, pick the front plane, and go to front view, we see we got a nice stacking condition. There's no way that that base can slide to the left or right or front or back. So that is one way that you can create a nesting and stacking relationship of a couple of objects. Also, with the 5 degrees of draft, we can nest the base inside of each other. That's nesting, and then we're stacking when we put a whole unit on top of another unit. So we're going to call this a wrap. We'll turn off the section. So if we look at our model tree, we have the sketch sections that represent the profile, lid and base, a couple of extrudes, and some drafts and all that good stuff. But just look at the list there and you can see the steps, and you can actually go back through them step at a time. But now, one other thing. This whole thing should be parametric, so let's give it a quick try. if I want, right now I've got what we call a squircle, squarish type circle. If I have a concept where these should be an oval shape, I should be able to go into the main profile, change this row value to 0.414, which makes an ellipse. And that's an elliptical shape. Now if I say done, everything should update and give us an oval container. And there we go. And if we want, we can change the height of the base. Let's say we want something more shallow. And we could change that to 2. And based on the relationships of things, it should update and still be in a stack condition. Now, if we wanted a family of products, we can get that from just this one data set by using configurations, which we're going to get to shortly. So right now, that's how you make a lid and a base that can nest and stack. And we see that my parametric dimensioning scheme and relationship was such that I could update the part and it worked out nice. Call it a wrap. I'll put some other information on the sections and stuff in a document. There you go.